Mother Bear walked into the hospital with an injured human baby. What happened next was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The small rural hospital that sat on the edge of Pinewood Forest had seen its fair share of emergencies over the years. Car accidents from the winding mountain roads, hikers with broken ankles, even the occasional bear attack victim. But nothing could have prepared the staff for what happened on that cool September evening. Dr. Lily Morgan had been on shift for nearly 12 hours. Her feet ached, and the coffee in her mug had long gone cold. The emergency room was quieter than usual, just an elderly man with chest pains and a teenager with a skateboarding injury. Lily rubbed her tired eyes, hoping the night would pass without incident. The automatic doors of the emergency entrance hissed open. Lily glanced up, expecting to see another patient. Instead, she froze. Her coffee mug slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. A massive brown bear stood in the doorway. Time seemed to stop. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the bear's matted fur. She was enormous, at least 7 feet tall when standing on her hind legs, with powerful muscles rippling beneath her thick coat. But it wasn't the bear's size that caused Lily's heart to pound against her ribs. It was what the bear carried. Cradled gently in the animal's massive paws was a small human baby wrapped in a torn blue blanket. The infant couldn't have been more than 6 months old. Its tiny face was scratched, and one arm appeared swollen and bruised. The baby whimpered softly, its cries barely audible in the stunned silence that had fallen over the emergency room. "Nobody move," whispered Connor Adams, the security guard, his hand inching toward the tranquilizer gun holstered at his side. His voice trembled despite his training. "Call animal control, now." But Nurse Jessica Brooks, who had been checking on the elderly patient, moved forward instead of back. Something about the bear's demeanor caught her attention. The animal wasn't growling or showing signs of aggression. Its dark eyes scanned the room with what Jessica could only describe as desperation. "Wait," Jessica said softly, raising her hand to stop Connor. "Look at how she's holding that baby. She's protecting it." The bear huffed, a low rumble that vibrated through the sterile hospital air. Several patients pressed themselves against the walls, terrified. A woman screamed from somewhere down the hallway, the sound echoing through the corridors. The bear didn't flinch. Instead, she moved forward with a surprising gentleness for such a massive creature. Her claws clicked against the linoleum floor as she approached the nearest gurney. With movements that seemed almost human in their carefulness, she placed the baby down on the clean white sheets. The infant's cries grew louder, its tiny fist clutching at the torn blanket. The bear nuzzled the baby once, then took 3 steps back, her eyes never leaving the child. "What on earth?" Dr. Morgan whispered, her medical training finally overcoming her shock. "This isn't possible." But it was happening right before their eyes. A wild bear had brought an injured human child to the hospital. The implications were staggering. Jessica moved closer, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She'd grown up in these mountains, had encountered bears while hiking more times than she could count. She knew they were intelligent, but this was something beyond understanding. "The baby needs medical attention," Jessica said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Doctor, Morgan, please." Lily hesitated only for a moment before her doctor's instincts took over. She approached the gurney slowly, keeping one eye on the bear. The animal watched her intently but made no threatening moves. As Lily reached the baby, She noticed something glinting around its neck, a small gold locket, partially hidden by the blanket. She focused on examining the child, her trained hands gently checking for injuries. Bruising on the right arm, possible fracture, she reported clinically, trying to maintain her professional demeanor despite the extraordinary circumstances. Superficial lacerations on the face and chest. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but we need to get this baby into treatment right away. The bear huffed again, shifting her weight from one paw to another. She seemed to understand. Outside the hospital, sirens wailed in the distance. Animal control was coming. Connor still had his hand on his tranquilizer gun, his knuckles white from gripping it so tightly. "Don't," Jessica warned him. "She brought this baby here for help. If you threaten her, there's no telling what might happen." The emergency room doors slid open again. Michael Hayes, the local forest ranger, stepped inside, his eyes widening at the scene before him. "I got the call," he said, his voice hushed. Didn't believe it until now. The bear's head swiveled toward Michael. Something like recognition flashed in her dark eyes. "There was a car accident reported last night," Michael said, not taking his eyes off the bear. "Up on Ridge Road, where it cuts through the forest. A vehicle went off the cliff. Search and rescue couldn't find any survivors in the wreckage, but they said a child's car seat was empty." Lily's fingers trembled as she opened the locket hanging around the baby's neck. Inside was a tiny photograph of a smiling couple holding their infant. Engraved on the back were the words, "Our beloved Ethan, forever loved." "Ethan," Lily whispered, looking down at the baby boy. "Your name is Ethan." The bear made a sound, not quite a growl, not quite a moan, that sent shivers down everyone's spine. And that's when Jessica Brooks understood what they were witnessing. Something impossible. Something that would change their understanding of the world forever. The mother bear had saved a baby from a car wreck. And somehow, driven by instincts that transcended species, she had known exactly where to bring him. Outside, the sirens grew louder. Time was running out. The bear's ears twitched at the sound. Her massive head turned toward the entrance, eyes narrowing. A low growl rumbled from her chest, not threatening, but anxious. "They're going to shoot her," Jessica whispered, her voice breaking. "They won't understand what's happening here." Michael Hayes moved toward the doors, his ranger uniform giving him an air of authority. "I'll try to hold them off. Buy us some time." He hesitated, glancing back at the bear with wonder in his eyes. "In 15 years of wildlife management, I've never seen anything like this. Bears they just don't do this." As Michael disappeared through the sliding doors, Connor's radio crackled to life. "Adams, report. We have reports of a bear in the emergency room. Animal control ETA 2 minutes. What's your status?" Connor looked from the radio to the bear, then to baby Ethan whimpering on the gurney. His hand slowly moved away from his tranquilizer gun. "Situation contained," he said, carefully into the radio. "Stand by for further instructions." Dr. Morgan worked quickly, removing Ethan's torn clothes to assess his injuries more thoroughly. The baby cried louder at her touch, his tiny face scrunched in pain. The bear took a step forward, her massive paws making the floor creak beneath her weight. Everyone tensed, but she simply watched, her brown eyes filled with what could only be described as concern. "It's a miracle he's not more seriously injured," Lily murmured, gently examining the swollen arm. "Definitely a fracture, but clean. He has some scratches and bruising, but nothing life-threatening." Jessica approached the bear slowly, her hands visible at her sides. The massive animal towered over her, but Jessica felt a strange absence of fear. "You saved him, didn't you?" she whispered to the bear. "You found him after the crash." the bear's dark eyes met Jessica's. Something passed between them, an understanding that defied explanation. "We need to get the baby to radiology," Dr. Morgan announced, "and we need to figure out who his parents are." "The accident," Jessica said, turning back to the group. Michael mentioned Ridge Road, the empty car seat. Lily nodded, carefully wrapping Ethan in a clean hospital blanket. "Connor, can you call Sheriff Bennett? Tell him we may have found the missing child from last night's accident." A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. Michael Hayes was arguing with two men in animal control uniforms, their tranquilizer rifles held at the ready. Behind them, a small crowd had gathered. Hospital staff, curious onlookers, and a local news reporter with a camera. "You can't just barge in there with those," Michael's voice carried through the glass doors. "I'm telling you, this isn't an ordinary situation." The bear's muscles tensed. She shifted her weight, moving to position herself between the entrance and the baby, a protective stance that sent chills down Jessica's spine. "She thinks they're a threat to the baby," Jessica realized aloud. "If they come in with those rifles—" Dr. Morgan made a quick decision. "We need to move Ethan to pediatrics now. Jessica, you stay with the bear. Try to, communicate with her somehow. Connor, help me with the baby." As Lily and Connor began to wheel the gurney toward the hallway that led deeper into the hospital, the bear let out a distressed sound. Not quite a roar, but powerful enough to freeze everyone in place. She took 2 massive steps toward the gurney, her intentions clear. The baby wasn't leaving her sight. "Wait," Jessica said, holding up her hand. I think she needs to come with us." "Are you out of your mind?" Connor hissed. "We can't let a wild bear roam through the hospital." "Look at her," Jessica insisted. "She brought him here for help. She's not leaving without knowing he's safe." The standoff lasted 10 agonizing seconds. Finally, Dr. Morgan nodded. "All right, but Connor, stay on alert if anything happens." They moved slowly down the corridor, an unbelievable procession. Dr. Morgan pushing the gurney with baby Ethan, Connor walking beside her with his hand hovering near his tranquilizer gun, Jessica walking backward, keeping her eyes on the bear and the massive animal herself, padding quietly behind them, her claws clicking rhythmically against the floor tiles. Hospital staff flattened themselves against walls as they passed. A janitor dropped his mop with a clatter. An elderly patient crossing the hall in a wheelchair gasped and fainted dead away. But the bear ignored them all, her focus entirely on the small bundle on the gurney ahead. They reached the pediatric ward, where Dr. Savannah Reed, the on-call pediatrician, waited outside the treatment room. Her eyes widened as she took in the bizarre group approaching her. "Lily, what in God's name—" "No time to explain," Dr. Morgan interrupted. "This baby needs immediate attention. Possible arm fracture, dehydration, exposure, and the bear stays." Dr. Reed's mouth opened and closed several times before she found her voice. "The bear stays? Trust me," Lily said, wheeling Ethan into the treatment room. "It's the only way this works." The treatment room was small, designed for a doctor, a nurse, a patient, and perhaps a concerned parent. It was not designed for a 500-pound wild animal. The bear had to duck her massive head to enter the doorway, and when she settled in the corner, her bulk took up nearly a quarter of the available space. But she remained remarkably still as the doctors worked, her intelligent eyes tracking their every movement. When they placed an IV line into Ethan's tiny arm, the bear growled softly, causing Dr. Reed to jump. But she didn't interfere. "X-rays confirm a fractured ulna," Dr. Reed reported, her voice steadier now, despite the extraordinary circumstances. He's also moderately dehydrated and his body temperature is a bit low. It's remarkable he's in such good condition, all things considered." "How long was he out there?" Lily wondered aloud. The door opened and Sheriff Jacob Bennett entered, his weathered face grave. He stopped short at the sight of the bear, his hand automatically moving to his sidearm. "Easy," Jessica warned. "She's calm as long as we don't threaten the baby." The sheriff slowly moved his hand away from his gun, his eyes never leaving the bear. "This is, well, I don't know what this is," he admitted, "but I have information about the accident." He pulled out a tablet and showed them photographs of a mangled car at the bottom of a steep ravine. "Kevin and Amanda Marshall, driving back from visiting family in Riverside. We think they hit a deer, lost control on the curve. The car went over Ridge Point around 9 p.m. last night." "And the parents?" Dr. Morgan asked quietly. Sheriff Bennett's expression said it all. "No sign of survivors at the crash site. Search and rescue has been looking, but..." He looked at baby Ethan, now sleeping peacefully under the influence of mild sedatives, as Dr. Reed carefully cast his arm. "The car seat was empty. We thought maybe the impact..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "So, she found him," Jessica said, looking at the bear with newfound awe. "She must have heard the crash, found the baby somehow, and kept him safe all night. That's..." Sheriff Bennett shook his head. "That's not possible." But the evidence was right in front of them. Outside the treatment room, the commotion was growing. Word had spread throughout the hospital and into the small town beyond. A crowd had gathered in the parking lot. Local news vans were arriving. The story of the bear who had rescued a baby and brought him to the hospital was spreading like wildfire. "We have another problem," Connor said, peering through the blinds at the gathering crowd. "The highway patrol just pulled up, and there's a state wildlife officer with them." Michael Hayes, who had been standing guard at the door, straightened his ranger uniform. "I'll talk to them. Try to explain." "Explain what?" Sheriff Bennett asked. "That a mother bear rescued a human baby from a car wreck and brought him to the hospital? They'll think we've all lost our minds." "But it happened," Jessica insisted. "We all saw it." A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Raised voices, the sound of heavy boots. The bear's ears flattened against her head, and she rose to her full height, towering over everything in the small room. A deep, warning growl vibrated through the air. The door burst open. A man in a state wildlife officer uniform stood there, flanked by 2 highway patrol officers. His eyes widened at the sight of the bear, now fully upright and clearly agitated. "Stand back," he ordered, raising a rifle that was definitely not loaded with tranquilizers. "No!" Jessica moved between the officer and the bear. "You don't understand." "Ma'am, move away now," the officer commanded. "That's a wild animal, and it's clearly agitated, because you're threatening her." Jessica refused to move. She saved that baby's life. The standoff might have ended tragically if not for what happened next. The bear, instead of attacking or defending herself, did something astonishing. She dropped back to all fours, moved to the examination table where baby Ethan lay, and very gently, very carefully, placed her massive paw on the edge of the table. Not threatening, not aggressive. Almost protective. The gesture was so human, so intentional, that everyone in the room fell silent. "She's been protecting him all night," Michael Hayes said quietly. "Found him after the crash, kept him warm, brought him here for help. It's incredible, but it's true. We all witnessed it." The wildlife officer lowered his rifle slowly. Disbelief etched across his face. "That's not possible," he whispered, echoing Sheriff Bennett's earlier words. "Sir," Dr. Reed spoke up, her professional demeanor returning. "I've treated this child's injuries. He has a fractured arm and minor scratches, but otherwise he's in remarkable condition. He spent at least 8 hours in freezing forest conditions after a violent car crash. He should have died from exposure. Instead, he's stable, relatively warm, and likely to make a full recovery." She gestured toward the bear. "The only explanation is that she protected him, kept him warm, and then, instead of seeing him as prey, she brought him somewhere he could get help." The wildlife officer looked from the bear to the baby, then back again. "I've studied bears for 20 years, he said slowly. "This doesn't make sense." "And yet, here we are," Dr. Morgan replied. A tense silence filled the room. Then the baby stirred, whimpering softly as he began to wake from the sedation. The bear immediately turned her attention to him, making a soft huffing sound that was almost soothing. "Wait," Sheriff Bennett said suddenly. "The search and rescue team is still looking for the parents. The report said the car went off Ridge Point, but the search area is huge. We haven't found any bodies yet." He looked at the bear with new understanding. "Could she know where they are? Could she lead us to them?" Hope flickered across every face in the room. If the bear had found and saved the baby, could the parents still be alive somewhere in the forest? Jessica approached the bear slowly, her heart pounding. The animal's intelligent eyes met hers again. "Can you help us?" she whispered. "Can you show us where they are?" The bear's response shook everyone to their core. She walked to the door, looked back at them, and waited. The message couldn't have been clearer if she'd spoken in human language. "Follow me." The wildlife officer stepped aside, lowering his rifle completely. "I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think she wants to lead us somewhere." "We have to go," Michael insisted, already checking his rescue gear. "If there's any chance the parents are still alive out there." "I'm coming too," Jessica said immediately. Connor hesitated only briefly before adding, "Me too." "Someone needs to stay with Ethan," Dr. Reed pointed out. Lily nodded. "I'll stay. The rest of you go, but for God's sake, be careful." The bear was growing impatient, pacing at the door, looking back at them repeatedly. Time was clearly of the essence. "I'll coordinate a rescue team," Sheriff Bennett said, already on his radio. "Hayes, you and Brooks go with the bear. See where she leads you, but maintain radio contact at all times." Outside, the crowd had grown larger. News cameras flashed as the bear emerged from the hospital entrance, followed by Jessica, Michael, Connor, and the wildlife officer. People gasped and pointed, but remarkably, no one panicked. The story had spread too quickly. Everyone knew this wasn't an ordinary bear. The bear paused at the edge of the forest that bordered the hospital grounds, looking back to make sure they were following. Then she plunged into the trees, moving with surprising speed for such a large animal. "Keep up," Michael called, breaking into a jog. The small group followed, leaving the lights of the hospital behind as they entered the dark, dense forest, following a mother bear on an impossible rescue mission. The bear set a punishing pace, leading them deeper into the forest and up the steep slopes that eventually led to Ridge Road. The terrain was difficult, slippery with pine needles, crisscrossed with fallen logs and hidden creeks. More than once, Jessica lost her footing, only to be steadied by Connor's strong hand. "How much farther?" The wildlife officer panted after nearly an hour of climbing. As if in answer, the bear stopped suddenly, her nose raised to the wind. She let out a low, rumbling call that echoed through the trees, a sound that raised the hair on the back of Jessica's neck. Then, faintly, impossibly, came an answer, a human voice calling for help. "Oh my God," Michael whispered. "Someone's alive out there." The bear moved again, more urgently now, leading them toward the source of the cry. They scrambled over a ridge and down into a small ravine where the bear stopped at the edge of a steep drop-off. Below, barely visible in the fading light, was the wreckage of the car, crumpled like a tin can at the bottom of the cliff. But the voice wasn't coming from the car. It was coming from somewhere to their right. Further along the ridge, the bear moved carefully now, picking her way along the edge of the cliff. The humans followed, using their flashlights to illuminate the treacherous path. The voice grew louder, more distinct. A woman's voice, weak but persistent. "Help! Is someone there? Please help us." And then they saw them, a man and a woman, huddled together in a small hollow beneath an overhanging rock. The woman was cradling her right leg, which was bent at an unnatural angle. The man was unconscious, a gash visible on his forehead even from a distance. "Amanda and Kevin Marshall?" Jessica called down to them, her voice breaking with emotion. The woman looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief and hope. "Yes." "Oh, thank God, please, my husband is badly hurt. And our baby, our son Ethan, he was thrown from the car. We couldn't find him. Please tell me you found him." "Ethan is safe," Jessica called back, tears streaming down her face now. "He's at the hospital. He's going to be fine." Amanda's sob of relief echoed through the ravine. "How did you find us?" "We've been calling for help, all night and all day." Jessica looked at the bear, who stood quietly at the edge of the cliff, watching the scene unfold below. "You wouldn't believe us if we told you," she said. Michael was already on his radio, calling in their location to Sheriff Bennett and the search and rescue team. "We need a helicopter extraction," he reported. "2 adults with injuries, 1 critical, and tell them to expect a bear escort." As the rescue operation swung into action, Jessica found herself standing next to the massive brown bear who had changed everything. The animal's sides heaved with exertion, her breath fogging in the cool evening air. "You did it," Jessica whispered to her. "You saved all of them." The bear made a soft sound, almost like a sigh. Then, without warning, she turned and began to walk away from the scene, deeper into the forest. "Wait," Jessica called, taking a step after her. "Where are you going?" The bear paused, looking back one last time. Her dark eyes seemed to hold a message that Jessica couldn't quite decipher. Then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows beneath the trees. It was only then that Jessica realized why the bear might be leaving so abruptly. In the distance, barely audible over the growing noise of the rescue operation, came a sound that made her heart clench, the faint calling of bear cubs, somewhere in the dense forest. The mother bear had her own children to return to. The hospital waiting room was packed with people when Jessica, Michael, and Connor returned, accompanying the helicopter that had airlifted Amanda and Kevin Marshall to safety. News crews jostled for position, eager for the incredible story. Hospital staff whispered in clusters, still processing what they had witnessed. Dr. Morgan met them at the entrance, her face alight with relief. "The parents are both stable," she reported. "Kevin has a severe concussion and some internal bleeding that they're addressing in surgery now. Amanda has a compound fracture in her leg and mild hypothermia, but she's conscious and responsive." "And Ethan?" Jessica asked anxiously. Lily's smile was warm. "Come see for yourself." She led them to a private room in the pediatric ward, where Amanda Marshall sat in a wheelchair beside a hospital crib, tears streaming down her face as she gently stroked her sleeping baby's cheek. Her own leg was heavily bandaged and elevated, an IV running into her arm, but she barely seemed to notice her own discomfort. "Mrs. Marshall," Lily said softly, "these are some of the people who helped save your family today." Amanda looked up, her eyes red from crying but filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "They told me what happened, that a bear found our baby and brought him to the hospital. I wouldn't have believed it if they hadn't shown me the security footage." Jessica moved closer, her own eyes filling with tears. Baby Ethan looked peaceful now, his tiny arm in a cast, his scratches already beginning to fade. "It's the most amazing thing I've ever witnessed," she said quietly. Amanda reached out and clasped Jessica's hand. "They say the bear led you to us too, that without her, search and rescue might never have found us in time." Jessica nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "Why?" Amanda asked, the question that was on everyone's mind. Why would a wild animal do something like that? No one had an answer. Science couldn't explain it. Logic couldn't rationalize it. And yet, it had happened. Sheriff Bennett entered the room, followed by the wildlife officer whose demeanor had completely changed from skepticism to wonder. "We've identified the bear," the wildlife officer announced. "Based on her size and markings, we believe she's a bear we've tracked in these mountains for years. The locals call her Luna." "Luna?" Jessica repeated, the name feeling right somehow. "The strange thing is," the officer continued, "Luna lost her own cubs to poachers last spring. We thought she might become aggressive toward humans afterward, as sometimes happens. Instead, ... He gestured helplessly at Ethan. "Instead, she saved mine," Amanda finished, fresh tears flowing. Sheriff Bennett cleared his throat. "The State Wildlife Department has issued a special protection order for Luna and her territory. She's not to be hunted or disturbed." "She has cubs again?" Jessica asked, remembering the distant calls she'd heard in the forest. The wildlife officer nodded. "2, born this spring. When she found your baby," he said to Amanda, "she must have, I don't know." Something in her recognized his helplessness. Her maternal instincts overrode everything else. "A mother's love," Amanda whispered, looking down at Ethan. Outside the window, the sun was setting over Pinewood Forest, casting long shadows across the hospital grounds. Somewhere in those woods, Luna was returning to her own babies, having done something no one would ever have thought possible. "You know," Michael said thoughtfully, "bears are highly intelligent. They have excellent memories. Luna will remember what happened here." Jessica gazed out at the darkening forest. "And so will we." In the days that followed, the story of Luna and baby Ethan captured hearts around the world. Media outlets clamored for interviews. Scientists debated explanations for the bear's behavior. Animal behaviorists arrived to study the phenomenon. But for those who had witnessed it firsthand, Dr. Lily Morgan, Nurse Jessica Brooks, Ranger Michael Hayes, security guard Connor Adams, and the Marshall family, no scientific explanation could fully capture what they had experienced. They had glimpsed something profound, a connection between species that transcended natural instincts, a compassion that defied evolutionary logic. They had witnessed a moment when the line between human and animal blurred, revealing something deeper and more universal. The primal urge to protect the vulnerable, regardless of species or circumstance. 1 week after the rescue, as Kevin Marshall was finally released from the hospital and the family prepared to return home, Jessica Brooks took one last hike into the forest. She carried with her a small bundle wrapped in cloth. At the edge of Luna's known territory, Jessica stopped and carefully placed the bundle on a flat rock. Inside was a jar of honey, a symbol of gratitude that Luna might appreciate, and a photograph of baby Ethan, healthy and smiling in his mother's arms. Jessica didn't expect Luna to appear, and she didn't. But as she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows between the trees, a large shape watching silently. Jessica raised her hand in a gesture of thanks, then started back down the trail toward the hospital. Behind her, in the quiet forest, Luna emerged from the trees. The massive bear approached the rock cautiously, sniffed at the offerings left there. She nudged the photo with her nose, as if studying the image of the human baby she had saved. Then, with her 2 cubs tumbling playfully behind her, Luna disappeared back into the wild, leaving behind a legacy that would forever change how the people of Pinewood viewed the delicate balance between humans and the natural world. And in the Marshall home, a small gold locket now contained 2 photographs, one of Amanda and Kevin holding baby Ethan, and one of a magnificent brown bear standing at the edge of the forest, her silhouette illuminated by the setting sun, a guardian angel in the most unexpected form, a reminder that compassion knows no boundaries, not even those between species. 6 months passed. Winter settled over Pinewood Forest, blanketing the mountains in pristine white snow. The story of Luna and baby Ethan had faded from national headlines, but in the small community surrounding Pinewood Hospital, it remained a living legend. Dr. Lily Morgan stood at the window of her office, watching snowflakes drift lazily past the glass. The framed newspaper article on her wall caught her eye. Miracle Bear saves infant, leads rescuers to injured parents. The photograph showed Luna entering the hospital, baby Ethan cradled in her massive paws. Lily still couldn't look at it without feeling a shiver run down her spine. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Jessica Brooks entered, cheeks flushed from the cold outside, snowflakes melting in her dark hair. "Did you hear?" Jessica asked without preamble, excitement making her voice tremble. Lily turned from the window. "Hear what?" Luna was spotted again near the edge of town. A family driving home last night got a flat tire on Ridge Road. While the father was changing it, their 3-year-old wandered off into the snow. They were frantic, searching everywhere. Lily's heart quickened. And they found their daughter sitting on a fallen log, perfectly safe, with Luna standing guard nearby. The bear didn't approach them, just watched from a distance until the family had the child, then disappeared back into the forest. Lily sank into her chair. It can't be coincidence. That's what Michael says too. He thinks Luna's behavior has fundamentally changed since what happened with Ethan. Like she's appointed herself some kind of guardian. The implications were staggering. A wild bear, actively watching over human children who strayed too close to danger. "There's more," Jessica continued, lowering her voice even though they were alone. "The wildlife department has been tracking Luna and her cubs. They've observed something they've never seen before. She's teaching them." "Teaching them what?" "To recognize humans, to distinguish adults from children. The cubs watch her, follow her lead. Michael thinks I know this sounds crazy, but he thinks she's teaching them not to fear humans, but to watch over them instead." Lily leaned back in her chair, struggling to process this information. If that's true, it changes everything we know about bear behavior, about animal cognition, even. The university wants to set up a research project. They're calling it the Luna Effect. They want to study whether this is an isolated anomaly or if it represents some kind of evolutionary leap in interspecies behavior. Dr. Morgan's phone rang, interrupting their conversation. She picked it up, listened briefly, then hung up with a puzzled expression. "What is it?" Jessica asked. "The Marshalls are here. They want to talk to us. Both of us." 5 minutes later, Amanda and Kevin Marshall sat across from them in Lily's office. Baby Ethan, now a healthy, chubby-cheeked toddler, played contentedly on Amanda's lap. His previously broken arm showed no sign of the trauma he'd experienced. "Thank you for seeing us without an appointment," Kevin began, his expression serious. "We wouldn't have come unless it was important." Amanda shifted Ethan to her other knee. "Something's happening, something we thought you should know about." "Is everything okay with Ethan?" Lily asked, medical concern immediately surfacing. "Ethan's fine," Amanda assured her. "Better than fine, it's just—" She glanced at her husband. Kevin took a deep breath. "It started about a month ago. Ethan was playing in his room. We heard him talking, the way toddlers do, babbling away. But it sounded like he was having a conversation. When we checked on him, he was sitting at his window, pointing out at the woods behind our house. We didn't think much of it at first," Amanda continued. "But then it kept happening. Always at dusk, always at the same window, he would point and say, 'Bay, bay,' over and over. 'Bear,' Kevin clarified. He was trying to say bear." A chill ran through Lily. Jessica leaned forward in her chair. "One evening, last week, I decided to watch from the kitchen window," Amanda said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And there she was, Luna, standing at the edge of our property, just looking toward Ethan's window." Kevin ran a hand through his hair, still clearly unsettled by the memory. "She comes every day now, always at the same time. Just stands there for a few minutes, then leaves. She never approaches the house, never makes any aggressive moves. It's like she's checking on him." "Ethan gets excited when he sees her," Amanda added. "It's like he remembers her somehow, though that's impossible. He was too young when it happened." Jessica and Lily exchanged glances, both thinking the same thing. Was it impossible? The bond that had formed between Luna and baby Ethan defied all natural logic. Why shouldn't it continue? "Have you told anyone else about this?" Jessica asked carefully. Kevin shook his head. "Just Michael Hayes. He's been helping us keep it quiet. The media circus was bad enough the first time around." "But last night something changed," Amanda said, her arms tightening protectively around Ethan. Luna wasn't alone. She brought her cubs. The statement hung in the air, its implications expanding like ripples in a pond. "She stood at the edge of the woods like always," Kevin continued. "But this time her two cubs were with her. She seemed to be showing them Ethan, like she wanted them to know who he was." Dr. Morgan sat back, momentarily speechless. Jessica's mind raced with possibilities, each more extraordinary than the last. "We're not sure what to do," Amanda admitted. "We're not afraid of her. How could we be after what she did for our family? But this relationship, whatever it is, it's unprecedented. We thought you should know. The thing is," Kevin added, leaning forward intently, "we're not the only ones. We've started hearing stories from other families in the area. Children who've wandered off being found unharmed near where Luna's been spotted. A boy who fell through the ice on Cooper's Pond last week said a big brown dog pushed him toward the shore until his father could reach him." Jessica felt goosebumps rise on her arms. Luna's territory has always been extensive, but these incidents are happening miles apart. "Almost like she's patrolling," Lily murmured. The office fell silent as they all contemplated the implications. A wild bear, intelligent and compassionate beyond all scientific understanding, actively watching over the human children in her territory. And now, seemingly teaching her cubs to do the same. "There's something else," Amanda said hesitantly. She reached into her purse and pulled out a children's drawing, bright crayon strokes on construction paper. It showed a crude house, 3 stick figures labeled Mommy, Daddy, and Me, and a large brown shape with a distinctive gold circle around its neck. Lily leaned closer to examine the drawing. "Is that a—" A locket, Amanda confirmed. Like the one Ethan was wearing when Luna brought him to the hospital. Kevin and I never told him that story. We thought he was too young to understand. And we certainly never mentioned the locket. Kevin gazed at his son, wonder and confusion mingling in his expression. It's like there's some connection between them that we can't explain. Ethan, oblivious to the adult's concern, happily banged a toy car against Amanda's knee, occasionally glancing toward the window as if expecting to see something or someone familiar. The implications stretched far beyond one unusual bear and one lucky child. If Luna was indeed teaching her cubs this protective behavior, and if those cubs grew up to do the same with their own offspring, the relationship between humans and bears in Pinewood Forest might be changing permanently. "What should we do?" Amanda asked, her voice small against the weight of the question. Before anyone could answer, the office door burst open. Connor Adams stood there, his security uniform rumpled, his face flushed from running. "You need to come quickly," he gasped. "All of you. It's Luna. She's been shot." The emergency veterinary clinic on the outskirts of town had never treated a bear before. The facility was designed for domestic pets and the occasional injured wildlife like raccoons or deer, not a 500-pound apex predator. But tonight, that's exactly what lay on their largest examination table, her massive body barely fitting in the space, dark blood matting her brown fur. Dr. Avery Johnson, the town's only veterinarian, looked up as Lily, Jessica, and the marshals rushed in. Her gloved hands were pressed against Luna's side, stemming the flow of blood from a gunshot wound. "GSW to the left flank," she reported clinically, though her eyes betrayed her emotional investment in this particular patient. The bullet missed vital organs, but she's lost a lot of blood. I've never treated a bear before, but I'm doing my best. Luna's eyes were half closed, her breathing shallow. She seemed barely conscious of the humans surrounding her. "Who did this?" Amanda demanded, clutching Ethan to her chest protectively. The toddler was unusually quiet, his wide eyes fixed on the injured bear. Michael Hayes stepped forward from where he'd been standing in the corner. His ranger uniform was spattered with blood, Luna's blood. "Poachers," he said grimly. "Up near Black Rock Ridge, I was doing my evening patrol when I heard the shot. Found her dragging herself toward her den. Her cubs were following, distressed, but unharmed." "Where are the cubs now?" Kevin asked. "Wildlife Rescue has them temporarily. They're safe." Dr. Johnson continued working as she spoke. "The bullet needs to come out. I've given her a sedative, but I'm not sure if the dosage is right for an animal her size. We're in uncharted territory here." "Did you catch who shot her?" Jessica asked Michael, anger flaring in her chest. The ranger's jaw tightened. "Not yet, but I will. Poaching is always a problem this time of year, but with Luna's celebrity status, let's just say, there are sick individuals who'd pay a lot for a trophy like her." Luna stirred on the table, a low moan escaping her throat. Her paw moved restlessly, as if searching for something. And then, something extraordinary happened. Ethan, who had been quiet in his mother's arms, suddenly began squirming, reaching toward the injured bear. "Bay, Bay," he cried insistently. "Shh, honey," Amanda soothed, trying to hold him back. "The bear is sick." But Ethan was determined. He twisted in his mother's grasp, his little face scrunched with determination. "Bay, help!" The adults exchanged startled glances. It was the clearest word Ethan had ever spoken. "Let me," Jessica said suddenly, reaching for the child. Something in her instincts told her this was important. After a moment's hesitation, Amanda handed Ethan to Jessica, who carefully brought him closer to the examination table. Close enough to see, but not to touch. "Look, Ethan," she said softly. "It's Luna. Do you remember Luna?" The toddler's eyes were locked on the bear. His small hand reached out, not quite touching her fur. "Luna," he said clearly, surprising everyone. "Luna hurt." Luna's eyes flickered open at the sound of his voice. Her massive head turned slightly, nostrils flaring as she caught Ethan's scent. A soft rumble emanated from her chest. Not a growl, but something gentler. Dr. Johnson paused in her work, watching the interaction with astonishment. "Her vital signs just improved," she said incredulously, glancing at the monitor, heart rate stabilizing. "It's like she recognized him." "She does recognize him," Lily said quietly. "She saved his life. That creates a bond." Luna's dark eyes remained fixed on Ethan, who had calmed in Jessica's arms. The toddler placed his small hand on his own chest, right where his heart would be, then extended it toward Luna in a gesture that seemed far too intentional for a child his age. "She's responding to him," Dr. Johnson observed, amazement coloring her professional tone. "I need to remove the bullet and stitch her up, but her stress levels are dropping just having him nearby." Kevin and Amanda exchanged a long look, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, Amanda nodded. "Would it help if Ethan stayed?" Kevin asked. "While you treat her?" Dr. Johnson considered this for a moment. "If his presence keeps her calm, yes, it might actually help. But at a safe distance, of course." And so, as Dr. Johnson worked to save Luna's life, extracting the bullet and repairing the damage it had caused, baby Ethan sat quietly in Jessica's lap in the corner of the room. He never took his eyes off the bear, and remarkably, despite her pain and the invasion of her body by human instruments, Luna kept her gaze fixed on him as well. Hours passed. The bullet was removed, the wound cleaned and sutured. Luna was given antibiotics, fluids, and pain medication. Through it all, Ethan remained, occasionally whispering, "Luna," or making soft, soothing sounds that no one had taught him. As dawn broke over the mountains, Dr. Johnson finally stepped back, peeling off her bloody gloves. "I've done all I can," she announced, exhaustion evident in her voice. "The next 24 hours will be critical. If infection sets in..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood the gravity of Luna's condition. "What about her cubs?" Jessica asked. "They need her." Michael, who had been coordinating with wildlife rescue throughout the night, checked his phone. "They're distressed, but physically fine. The rescue team says they keep calling for her." "Cubs that age can't survive without their mother," Dr. Johnson said grimly. "If Luna doesn't make it..." Amanda stepped forward, Ethan now sleeping in her arms. "What if we brought the cubs here?" To be with her, the suggestion was unprecedented, potentially dangerous. But then again, everything about this situation defied normal protocols. Dr. Johnson looked to Michael, the wildlife expert among them. Would that help her recovery? Having her cubs nearby? The ranger considered this. Bears are incredibly devoted mothers. Having her cubs close might give her something to fight for. He hesitated, then added, "But if she feels threatened or thinks they're in danger, she could become aggressive, even in her weakened state." All eyes turned to Luna, who lay still and massive on the examination table, her sides rising and falling with labored breaths. Despite the sedation, her eyes remained partially open, fixed on the door as if willing her cubs to appear. "I think we should try," Jessica said firmly. "Luna trusted us with her baby." She nodded toward the sleeping Ethan. "We should trust her with hers." The decision made, Michael left to coordinate the transfer of the bear cubs. The rest settled in to wait, taking turns watching over Luna while the others caught brief moments of rest on the clinic's uncomfortable waiting room chairs. It was nearly noon when Michael returned, accompanied by 2 wildlife rescue specialists carrying a large, reinforced car. Inside each, a bear cub paced anxiously, making distressed whimpering sounds. Luna heard them immediately. Despite her weakened state, she raised her head, nostrils flaring as she caught their scent. A low, rumbling call emerged from her throat, a mother calling to her children. The cubs responded instantly, their cries becoming more urgent. They scratched at the carriers, desperate to reach her. "Everyone back up," Dr. Johnson instructed, moving to create space around Luna. "Give them room." With extreme caution, the rescue specialists placed the carriers near Luna's examination table, then backed away to a safe distance. Michael used a long pole to unlatch the carriers from afar, allowing the cubs to push their way out. They tumbled from the carriers in a rush of dark fur and anxious energy, immediately making their way to their mother. The larger cub nuzzled Luna's face, while the smaller one pressed against her uninjured side, both making soft sounds of distress and relief. Luna's massive paw came up to draw her cubs closer, her eyes closing briefly in what could only be described as contentment. The monitors tracking her vital signs showed immediate improvement, strengthening heart rate, stabilizing blood pressure. "Incredible," Dr. Johnson whispered. "Their presence is literally healing her." The gathered humans watched in awe as the bear family reunited. Despite her injury, Luna meticulously checked each cub, sniffing them all over as if ensuring they were unharmed. The cubs settled against her, drawing comfort from her presence even as she drew strength from theirs. "We should give them privacy," Lily suggested quietly. The group retreated to the waiting room, leaving a single camera to monitor the bears remotely. In the waiting area, Amanda gently roused Ethan, who had slept through most of the drama. "Luna's going to be okay, sweetie," she told him, though she had no scientific basis for this assurance. "Her babies are with her now." Ethan blinked sleepily, then smiled. "Luna, okay," he agreed with the simple confidence of a child. "Luna, stay." The adults exchanged glances, struck by his certainty. "I need to report this to the wildlife department," Michael said, checking his phone, "and step up the search for the poachers. If they know Luna survived, they might try again." "I'll help," Connor volunteered. "I know these woods almost as well as you do." Kevin pulled Amanda and Ethan closer. "Maybe we should take him home. Let him rest properly." But Amanda shook her head, watching her son's face. "Not yet. I think Ethan needs to be here. For Luna." No one questioned her maternal instinct. In a situation that defied all normal understanding, they were all operating on instinct more than logic. As the day progressed, Luna's condition gradually improved. Dr. Johnson monitored her closely, amazed by her resilience. The cubs remained by her side, occasionally playing quietly together but never straying far from their mother. By evening, Luna was alert enough to accept water and small amounts of food. Her eyes tracked everyone who entered the room, intelligent and wary, but not aggressive. When Amanda brought Ethan to the observation window to see her, Luna's gaze fixed on the child with unmistakable recognition. "I've never seen anything like this connection," Michael commented, watching Ethan press his small hand against the glass, Luna's eyes following the movement. "It's like they communicate on some level we can't understand." "Maybe they do," Jessica suggested. "Maybe there are kinds of communication that science hasn't recognized yet." As night fell again, Dr. Johnson announced that Luna was stable enough to be moved to a more suitable recovery facility, a wildlife rehabilitation center about 30 miles away that had experience with large predators. The transport will be risky, she cautioned. Moving her could reopen the wound or cause additional stress, but she needs more specialized care than I can provide here. The news was met with mixed emotions. Everyone was relieved that Luna was likely to survive, but the thought of her being taken away from Pinewood, away from Ethan, felt somehow wrong. When will she be released back into the wild? Kevin asked. Michael sighed. That's complicated. Under normal circumstances, after an injury like this, she would be evaluated for return to her territory. But Luna isn't a normal bear. Her interactions with humans, her protective behavior toward children, it makes her situation unique. What are you saying? Amanda asked, her arms tightening around Ethan. I'm saying that some in the wildlife department might consider her too habituated to humans. There's talk of relocating her to a sanctuary instead of releasing her back into these mountains. The news landed like a stone in still water, ripples of concern spreading through the group. But this is her home, Jessica protested. Her territory, her hunting grounds, and she has cubs to raise. I know, Michael agreed. I'm fighting for her release here, but it's not entirely my decision. Lily, who had been quiet for some time, suddenly spoke up. What if we could prove that Luna's unusual behavior is actually beneficial? That her presence here creates a unique form of coexistence between humans and wildlife. How would we do that? Connor asked. The research project Jessica mentioned, the Luna effect. What if we fast-tracked it? Gathered evidence of how Luna's presence has actually reduced human-wildlife conflicts in the area, how she's begun a new pattern of behavior that could be studied. Michael considered this. It would have to be compelling evidence, and gathered quickly before decisions about her release are finalized. Then let's do it, Jessica said decisively. Let's tell Luna's full story, not just how she saved Ethan, but everything that's happened since. The children she's watched over, her visits to the Marshall home, her teaching behavior with her cubs. Let's make a case for keeping her here, in her natural habitat where she belongs. As they began to formulate a plan, none of them noticed Ethan slipping from his mother's lap. The toddler wobbled to the observation window, placing both small hands against the glass. Inside the exam room, Luna raised her massive head, her eyes meeting Ethan's across the space that separated them. A connection flowed between child and beast, something primal and yet utterly new, two species reaching across the divide that had separated them since ancient times. In that moment, something shifted in the fabric of understanding between humans and the wild. Something that would ripple outward from this small mountain town, challenging conventional wisdom about animal cognition, about the boundaries between species, about the capacity for communication and compassion across those boundaries. Luna would recover. She would return to her forest home with her cubs. And the relationship between the bear and the boy she had saved would continue to unfold, a living testament to possibilities that extended far beyond what science had imagined. But first, there was a battle to be fought, not just for Luna's future, but for a new understanding of coexistence between humans and the wild creatures with whom they shared the world. 2 weeks passed. Luna and her cubs were transferred to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, where specialists marveled at her unusual behavior. Her calm acceptance of human presence, her protective instincts toward her cubs, and most remarkably her apparent recognition of specific humans she had encountered before. Meanwhile, in Pinewood, an extraordinary movement was taking shape. Jessica, Lily, Michael, and the Marshalls had begun collecting testimonials, stories of Luna's interactions with humans, particularly children, over the past 6 months. What started as a handful of anecdotes quickly grew into dozens. Parents came forward with accounts of children found safely playing near where Luna had been spotted. Hikers described encounters where the bear had appeared to warn them away from dangerous areas, steep drops, unstable ground, even a mountain lion's territory. The evidence was compelling but anecdotal. They needed more. Scientific observation, documented patterns, expert analysis. Dr. Savannah Reed, who had treated Ethan when Luna first brought him to the hospital, reached out to colleagues at the university where she taught part-time. Soon, a team of wildlife biologists, animal behaviorists, and cognitive scientists had assembled, eager to study what was being called the most significant case of interspecies altruism ever documented. The Luna Effect Research Project was officially launched with emergency funding and expedited approvals. Camera traps were set up throughout Luna's territory. Tracking data from her radio collar, applied during her treatment at the rehabilitation center, was analyzed for patterns. Interviews were conducted with every person who claimed to have witnessed Luna's unusual protective behavior. As data accumulated, a remarkable picture emerged. Luna wasn't just an anomaly. She appeared to be the catalyst for a new behavioral pattern among the bears in Pinewood Forest. Trail cameras captured images of other bears giving humans wider berth rather than confronting them, seemingly taking cues from Luna's behavior. Incidents of bear-human conflict in the area had dropped by nearly 60% in the 6 months since Luna had brought Ethan to the hospital. Most compelling were the videos of Luna with her cubs, clearly demonstrating what the researchers termed instructional behavior, deliberately showing her young how to interact with human environments, when to retreat, when to observe, and most extraordinarily when to intervene if a human child appeared to be in danger. She's teaching them discernment, Dr. Haley Dawson, the lead animal behaviorist, explained during a presentation to the Wildlife Department officials who would ultimately decide Luna's fate. This isn't just habituation to humans, which would be concerning. This is a new category of adaptive behavior, coexistence with deliberate boundary maintenance. The scientific community was divided. Some dismissed the findings as anthropomorphization, the human tendency to project human-like motivations onto animal behavior. Others saw it as a breakthrough in understanding the cognitive capabilities of large predators. But for the people of Pinewood who had witnessed Luna's actions firsthand, there was no debate. Something extraordinary was happening in their forest, and Luna was at the center of it. As the date approached for the Wildlife Department to make their decision about Luna's release, tensions in the community ran high. Would she be returned to Pinewood Forest or transferred to a distant sanctuary where she would live out her days in captivity, separated from the territory she had patrolled for years? The evening before the scheduled decision, Amanda Marshall sat in Ethan's room, watching her son sleep. The toddler had been unusually fussy all day, as if sensing something important was about to happen. Now he slept fitfully, occasionally murmuring "Luna" in his dreams. Amanda brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, marveling at how much he had grown since that terrifying night of the car accident. Would he remember any of this when he was older? The bear who had saved his life, who had somehow formed a connection with him that defied explanation. A movement outside the window caught her attention. Amanda froze, then slowly rose to look out into the darkened yard. There, at the edge of the forest, stood not one bear, but 3. Luna, instantly recognizable despite the distance, and her 2 growing cubs beside her. Amanda's heart pounded against her ribs. Luna had escaped from the rehabilitation center 30 miles away. Somehow, she had made her way back to Pinewood, back to the Marshall home with her cubs in tow. With trembling fingers, Amanda reached for her phone and dialed Michael's number. "She's here," she whispered when he answered. "Luna's outside Ethan's window. She's escaped from the center." There was a moment of silence on the line. Then Michael said, "She didn't escape, Amanda. They released her this afternoon, early, without announcement." "What? Why?" "The director made the call, said the evidence was too compelling to ignore. Luna belongs in these mountains." He paused. "But they only released her near her den site, 10 miles from your house. She shouldn't be there yet." And yet she was. Standing vigil outside Ethan's window, as she had done so many evenings before her injury, teaching her cubs through her actions that this human child was under their protection. "What do I do?" Amanda whispered. "Nothing," Michael advised. "Just let her be. She's not a threat to you or Ethan, quite the opposite." Amanda ended the call and continued to watch the bears. Luna's gaze was fixed on Ethan's window, her posture alert but relaxed. After several minutes, she huffed softly to her cubs, and the 3 bears melted back into the darkness of the forest. It wasn't until they had disappeared that Amanda noticed what Luna had left behind. A small, bright object placed carefully at the edge of the yard. In the moonlight, it glinted gold. The next morning, Kevin found it while checking the yard before letting Ethan out to play. He brought it inside, his hands shaking slightly as he placed it on the kitchen table. It was Ethan's locket, the one he had been wearing the night of the crash, the one that had helped the hospital staff identify him. The clasp had broken during Luna's rescue, and the locket had been presumed lost in the forest. But Luna had found it, kept it, and now returned it to its rightful owner. When they told Jessica and Lily about the returned locket, both women were speechless. It was Connor who finally voiced what they were all thinking. "This isn't just intelligence," he said quietly. "This is awareness, understanding. Luna knows exactly what she's doing." The implications stretched far beyond one unusual bear, one saved child. If Luna was capable of this level of intention, of memory, of symbolic thinking, returning an object of human significance to its proper place, what did that mean for our understanding of animal consciousness, of the potential for communication and connection between species? As news of Luna's release spread through the community, something unexpected began to happen. Residents who had once feared bears, who had called for their removal or hunting when they ventured too close to human areas, began to see them differently. Not as threats to be eliminated, but as intelligent neighbors with whom a new kind of relationship might be possible. The Luna Effect Research Project expanded its scope, installing wildlife corridors and bear-aware education programs throughout the region. Reports of bear-human conflicts continued to decline, and slowly, a new model of coexistence began to take shape in Pinewood Forest, one based not on fear and separation, but on mutual respect and understanding. Luna and her cubs remained wild, as they should be. They hunted in the forest, denned during the coldest month, lived according to the rhythms of nature. But they also continued their unusual patrolling behavior, maintaining what researchers came to call their territory of concern, an area that included key human pathways, children's play areas, and yes, the Marshall home. Ethan grew from toddler to child, the story of his rescue becoming part family legend, part scientific case study. He wore the returned locket on special occasions, a tangible reminder of his unique bond with the forest guardian who had saved his life. And on quiet evenings, particularly when storms threatened or dangers lurked, residents of Pinewood might glimpse a massive brown bear and her growing cubs moving silently along the boundary between wilderness and civilization, not crossing over, but watching, protecting, maintaining the delicate balance that allowed two worlds to exist side by side. The mother bear, who walked into a hospital with an injured human baby, had done more than save one child's life. She had initiated a transformation in how humans and wildlife might coexist, challenging ancient boundaries and opening new possibilities for communication across the species divide. In the scientific literature, it became known as the Luna effect. Documented evidence that compassion could transcend evolutionary boundaries, that intelligence could express itself in ways humans had failed to recognize, that the line between human and animal consciousness might be far more permeable than previously understood. But for the people of Pinewood who witnessed it firsthand, it was simply the story of Luna and Ethan, a bear and a boy, connected by an act of rescue that defied explanation, but offered hope for a world where wildness and humanity found new ways to exist in harmony. 5 years later, a 7-year-old Ethan Marshall stood at the edge of the forest behind his home, his parents watching from a careful distance. In his small hand, he held a fresh honeycomb, sticky and sweet, harvested from his father's newly established beehives. "Luna," he called softly, "I brought something for you." For several minutes, nothing happened. The forest remained still and silent, shadows lengthening as the sun began to set. Then, movement, a rustling of undergrowth. And there she was, older now, silver threading her dark fur, but still powerful, still regal. Luna emerged from the trees, her gaze immediately finding Ethan. Behind her came not cubs, but adolescent bears, nearly grown, her offspring who had witnessed the entire extraordinary journey from their earliest days. Ethan carefully placed the honeycomb on a flat rock, then stepped back. "Thank you for saving me," he said clearly, words he had spoken many times before in this same ritual. "Thank you for watching over us." Luna approached the rock, sniffed the offering, then raised her head to look directly at Ethan. The connection between them remained palpable, a bridge across species that science could study but never fully explain. With deliberate movements, Luna placed her massive paw briefly on the honeycomb, then turned and disappeared back into the forest, her grown cubs following. Where her paw had touched, Ethan found something unexpected, a perfect pine cone, placed with intention. A gift exchanged for a gift, a communication without words. The Luna effect continued to ripple outward from Pinewood Forest, challenging preconceptions, opening possibilities. Other communities began to report similar phenomena, predators exhibiting protective behaviors toward humans in distress, apparent acts of cross-species communication, new patterns of coexistence. Was this an evolutionary leap? A new adaptation in a world where human and animal territories increasingly overlapped? Or had such capacities always existed, unrecognized by humans too quick to see animals as less conscious, less aware, less capable of compassion than themselves? The questions continued to unfold, the research expanded, but one thing remained clear. The night a mother bear walked into a hospital with an injured human baby had marked the beginning of something profound. A new chapter in the ancient relationship between humans and the wild. A possibility that different forms of intelligence might yet learn to recognize, respect, and protect one another in a world that belonged to them all. Ethan clutched the pine cone to his chest, a smile spreading across his young face. He didn't need scientific papers or research studies to understand what had happened.